Looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulty with Rushmore, so we're going to quick go and switch to Jamie. Jamie, you want to tell me a little bit about yourself and your liberty movement there in Michigan?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Jamie Van Alstine. I've been a member of the Libertarian Party of Michigan and the National Party since 2018. And of course, that means that I've lived through the entirety of the COVID regime and the Whitmer, well, just call it regime. I think they kind of go together here. Yeah. So, so I've been active in the party. I've been a county chair. I've been on the state board. I've ran as a county commissioner, and I've also run candidate support committees and some of our candidates in that time.
Okay, awesome. So I've seen here that you touched a little bit on it, that Michigan has been pretty much in the spotlight for resisting some of these harsh lockdowns and mandates in the country. Can you just kind of give us an overview of how the Libertarian Party in Michigan has been pushing back against these challenges and mandates and stuff?
I would say principally in noncompliance. I mean, even as soon as there were some gaps in the lockdowns, we were attending in-person meetings wherever we could, whenever we could. We were staying active during the entirety of the lockdowns. We actively supported some of our businesses that were protesting and staying open during the lockdowns up in the UP and on the west side of the state. And of course, we showed up on the Capitol steps a couple of times during that time. So we were visibly active, but of course, like most libertarians and actually most Americans throughout the time, we were vocal on social media, whether it was Twitter, Facebook, with our friends, family, on the front stoop.
Okay. So I love seeing that everyone was kind of standing up both digitally and in person. So a little bit, let's pivot a little bit towards the federal entrapment aspect of everything. So being that I'm from Pennsylvania, I'm not far, but we've heard there's the infamous case with the FBI trying to frame Michigan residents in a plot to kidnap Governor Whitmer. What's your take on that?
Well, I mean, of course, I am an ascriber to the NAP, but the thing is the FBI does what the FBI does, and that is they create these crimes and then they look for someone to commit them. And that's essentially what we saw with this. Is you saw a lot of disgruntled people, rightfully so, who were locked down, couldn't go to work, had to close businesses, couldn't take care of their families, frustrated with the governor's handling of that. And so they were ripe pickings. And so the government laid out a plan and gave them the material support. And we saw the mass arrest, but we also saw that in several of those trials that the jury didn't buy the state's case.
It's the one positive of having a jury of your peers.
Absolutely.
So how has this affected the liberty movement in Michigan? Has it brought more people to join the fight? Have you been able to turn a few more people from the red and blue to the yellow?
So Michigan is complicated, and I wish I could say yes, but I don't know if your listeners or watchers know. There's also been a lot of internal party controversy in Michigan, which has affected our ability to really draw in and keep new members. But what we did see is an expansion of the liberty movement at all in Michigan. And that was people waking up to say, this is beyond, the government's mandate. And so a lot of people have become woke in the original term. They see what's going on and they're interested in looking, and we want to continue to provide a place for them to land in the party, in the Libertarian Party in Michigan.
Well, that's always great to hear. So what are some other ways that LP Michigan is pushing it back against government overreach? So you mentioned like the non-compliance and on social media and digitally. So what's some other stuff that you guys are doing out there?
Well, one of our members organized the March to Defend. So again, Michigan has been kind of, it's certainly not the only state, but it's been one of the larger states that's been pushing increased Second Amendment violations. So we're talking red flag laws, registration, parents being held and others being held responsible for irresponsible gun use. A lot of things have been coming down in that regard, and we, as a party and members, organized a March to Defend, which was a counter protest to the hog movement. Of course, we had, like many states, a tragic school shooting, so there was a lot of activity out of state, organizations coming in, to protest guns, and we organized a counter march, which was very well attended, and we got a lot of media. So that, coupled with the fact that many of our members have shown up at the legislature armed, again, during this COVID period. So you can see Michigan is just active and frustrated.
Yeah. So it's definitely great to see LP Michigan kind of making a difference and on multiple fronts. What's kind of you guys' next step in the liberty movement in Michigan? Like, where do you see things heading within like the next year or so?
I think again, members are really, really hoping for more stability in the party in Michigan again, because we have some internal factionalization and fracturing, which is affected. So we're really looking for members and leadership to kind of refocus on the mission, and that is, getting in the community, speaking to the public, getting members in, offering voters and community members an alternative to the Whitmer's policies, the Republican policies, and the status quo in this state.
It definitely sounds like you guys have a good plan and a lot of momentum going for you. I do. You think you have anything else you want to say before we pivot and try and get Rushmore back on here? If we got his mic all fixed up.
If we've got him fixed up, bring him on. Let's expand the conversation. I'm very interested to hear what he has to say as an insider.
Okay, let's get him on here.
Hey, how you doing?
There you are.
Here I am. Coming through better now?
Much better.
Alrighty.
Okay, like I mentioned before, we have Rushmore. We are protecting his identity for his own safety, because of his employment environment and such. So just give us a little bit about yourself, without giving too many details and stuff like that.
I'm starting to wonder if there's a conspiracy every time.
I
it gets to
wonder.
the
I
next-
think someone's out to get him with this. Every time he goes to talk.
How about now?
That's better. See if it holds. Okay. So let's just dive right in then while we have your mic working. Michigan's often portrayed as a battleground for liberty, but behind the scenes, there seems to be a lot of corruption going on. Can you kind of tell us what you've been seeing personally? I think I lost him again.
He's rejoining. He's near the Canadian border, so.
Yeah, that would probably explain it.
He's literally outside the Canadian border, so.
Just a little bit of technical difficulties with connections. So Jamie, you guys are having an upcoming convention. You want to tell us a little bit about that while we fill some time here? Some stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, we aren't having our next convention until 2025. It is the regular convention where we elect officers, look at our bylaws, look at our platform. That could be anywhere between April and July. We haven't gotten a date as of yet. But yeah, I mean, it's the normal annual love fest of libertarians in Michigan.
So you guys excited about having the next national convention up in Michigan?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I'm from that side of the state. I was born there.
Yeah.
Oh, we've got Rushmore. I'm going to let him speak.
Maybe we have me. I don't know. There's a ghost in the machine going on right now.
Okay. So tell us what you're seeing. I have him there. You lost him again. I might have to reschedule with Rushmore.
That's unfortunate.
I know, but that's technologies today.
Yeah, issues going on all day today, all over the nation.
Everyone's having issues between internet and cellular. Okay. So let's see.
Right.
I got your mic still working. Good. We're gonna try and go through this
We're
quickly.
gonna have to do this off the cuff. Yeah, go ahead, shoot.
Go. Tell us what you're seeing.
What we're seeing down here is, unfortunately, business as usual. Corruption is rampant. No one seems to be giving a damn about it. The people are frustrated, especially everyone I talked to in the 2A movement when I was in Lansing last week for the Second Amendment March. So a lot of people that are frustrated, and media is totally useless. It's hard to get the word. It's hard to get the word out. It's the deck is stacked. There's not too much more to say on that front, but we got to just keep pushing. We got to keep pushing forward. We know there's plenty of corruption, and we're doing our best out here to fight it and get the word out in our own right. I'm the leader of an organization here in Michigan, and we're trying to reach people largely through word of mouth and shows like this to try to get the word out about how the Constitution is still real, it's still in place, it's still alive, and we got to use it to our advantage using many different methods, including tactical civics, which is a new thing that I just love.
So tell me a little bit about stuff that's going on with some of these bids and contracts and stuff that are going on up there.
Let's see where to begin.
I think we lost connection again.
I think he has Verizon, and Verizon has.
Yeah, and they've been having issues today.
Yeah.
So
I could have him back on later, and we could just focus on Jamie in Michigan then.
yeah, definitely. I don't trying to see trying to think of what else I can talk to Jamie about. Let's see. What is some of the other stuff that you're seeing, Jamie? Because I think you're in a different area than Rushmore is.
Well, yeah, I don't know where Rushmore is, but I'm in Metro Detroit area, which is southeast Michigan. And as everybody, let me see, is that the right way?
The Mitt.
Yeah, I'm somewhere like right down here, just north of Toledo, Ohio. So, I mean, if we want to talk about politics in Michigan broadly, I mean, corruption is kind of like the orders of the day in Michigan. I mean, we had the Flint water crisis. That was our Republican governor. Pretty much every one of our governors in my lifetime, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, but it's been quite a few governors, have had some scandal. I mean, I don't know if we were lucky or unlucky enough to have Whitmer during COVID, but I mean, that was kind of magnitudes greater than anything else that I or anybody else in the state has experienced. But I mean, it's pretty standard operating procedure here. We have a legislature and a government that tends to try to pander to the voter base, as per government. I mean, as politicians normally do.
Hard.
Yeah, but it's been interesting how since, we'll just say 2016, where our politics has become so extremely polarized. And again, I mean, we've had that for a long time, but it just kind of expanded to a degree greater than I've ever experienced in 2016. And now you've got the extremes on both sides here competing for I don't know if we can even say it the extreme vote, but I mean, they are just throwing out popcorn and candy, randomly to attract voters with the most outrageous, I don't know, offerings. The bribery almost is blatant, voter bribery, and what Whitmer has done is basically bought off the electorate in my mind. That's how I see it. And the Republicans have made it easy, very, very easy. I mean, she would be scorned in every circle in normal times because of her response to COVID, but the GOP and the Supreme Court overturning Roe gave her a softball in Michigan, and she has leveraged that for all she's worth to get expansive abortion protections in this state. But she didn't stop there. I mean, I'm personally pro-choice politically, but she didn't stop there. She took that momentum and just crammed down whatever she could, which was the expanded gun restrictions in this state. It was expanding union protections. It was expanding funding for school lunches. And whether you like these programs or not, it's just been a progressive laundry list that she's been able to just push, just strictly as a reaction against the fear of having abortion outlawed in the state. So, I mean, the politics is pretty gross in Michigan. I mean, it's fear politics, which is, I think, probably common in many other states, to the ninth degree.
So, I was wondering if you were thinking of running for office again, and if so, what kind of things would you have in your elevator speech?
I don't know. I was hesitant because I'm one of those weird anarchists that resides in the Libertarian Party. Though I did run for county commission, and if I'm going to run, which I don't know if I am again, it would be a local office, because I think fundamentally that's where you can affect the most change. Of course, I support our statewide candidates and our national candidates. But if I was to run, it would definitely be for a local office, county level, or even city government, just for the fact that you have a greater impact on your constituents' daily lives. And to me, I also ran during COVID, and I was running on medical freedom at that time. And principally, that's what I was focused on, is if we are having to spend our money, make it stay local, be spent local on local priorities, get federal government out of your life as much as possible. Similar with the state, is just keep control on as many domains of our lives as possible local, and prioritize that. That's my elevator speech.
Yeah. So we all know Michigan's known for their auto industry, but like for any business, regulations can hold them back.
Yeah.
How would a libertarian-led government reduce regulatory burdens, and encourage a more free market innovation in the state?
Well, we are big opponents of LARA, which is the licensing and regulatory agency in Michigan, and just like many of the other states. I mean, when you have to get a license to serve food as a food handler, and you have to have a license to show that you've had your inspections, and that all of your food handling is compliant. And this is just a restaurant. So from the food server to the building to the business owner, you've got at least 3 layers of licensing just to run a restaurant. This is ridiculous. And when we talk about hair care, yes, sure. Who needs a license to braid hair? So let's look at things that actually protect our health in our communities and apply the base minimum, if anything, because regulations kill innovation, they kill growth, they limit jobs. Essentially, the more you impose on the business, the less they can expand and do and hire. So, of course, the destruction of the regulatory state is my goal. But of course, that is in my utopia. But anything to reduce that, to expand the ability to people to start businesses, to build and do things on their own property peacefully is a net positive.
So you mentioned you're from the Detroit area. So have you seen stuff with the economy, with the factories leaving and stuff? They're leaving for the more business friendly states, like you said, because all these regulations and everything. What have you kind of been seeing?
So it's a mixed bag in Michigan. I mean, we still have at least the U.S. automakers headquarters in Michigan, and so there are lots of white collar jobs in Michigan in terms of the auto industry. But of course, manufacturing in Michigan has pretty much died, and in the supporting manufacture, including automotive parts and other things. have either moved out of state for friendlier business climes or out of the country for lower wages. But Michigan is recovering in that it's moving much more towards a sector based, whether it be tech sector in support of the automotive or IT innovation. We are moving much more in that direction than manufacturing. We've actually posted record job growth in terms of number of jobs in Michigan, but that's over decades. So It's been a very slow recovery.
Yeah, it's hard when your bread and butter kind of just goes, oh, I'm going somewhere else. And you're like, what do I do?
Yeah, exactly.
A lot of people can't just up and leave with them.
No.
So seeing like stuff, how the growth and everything now is all cliche because you have Eminem and Kid Rock are from there. What have they been doing anything to help, or that you know of, or have seen, or is it just theater, or there's actually stuff being done that they're using their standing to help?
In terms of Eminem and Kid Rock or the main celebrities, there's not a lot going on in the communities. At least that's apparent to me or anybody else. I mean, our football players do more for the community in the state than our celebrities that are mentioned. But there's not a lot going on in terms of that. Most of the community service and charitable work being done in the state, any of the promotion for the community is usually our nonprofit organizations.
Okay, well, at least there's somebody doing something. That's always nice to see. At least you guys are getting something out of it. I'm trying to think. I haven't had to pivot so much. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I can come up with. Here we go. Who would you say is your libertarian mentor?
Well, okay. So this wasn't limited to the party. So I was raised by a libertarian. So I definitely have to say my dad. He was never a party member, but he was an avowed libertarian, voted libertarian on every ballot where a libertarian was present. He was libertarian before I knew what libertarian was. I somehow knew I was libertarian before I knew what libertarians were, just because of my dad. So definitely my dad.
It's always great to see when it's in the family and stuff like that. So there's a debate that's been going around. I think it's pretty much everywhere with police reform, and it's pretty polarizing. With some sides are calling for defunding the police, others are advocating for reform. Kind of where do you stand with this issue, especially in a state like Michigan where there's pockets of crime that people seem to be concerned about? And it kind of makes national news or anything like that. Even I'm 45 minutes from Philly, so I have Philly as my little pocket of crime there. So, what is it like? Like, what do you see, and where do you stand on that in Michigan area?
So it's complicated, or at least my position is kind of complicated. So I grew up in Detroit. So in the city, I'm not from Bloomfield, saying Detroit. I was born or raised in Detroit. So I kind of lived it. Again, I'm not going to tell you when I grew up there just because I don't want to age myself. But Detroit has actually improved compared to when I was growing up there in many ways. So in terms of policing in Detroit, when I was young, we had our own Rodney King incident with two of our officers that had assaulted Malice Green, and that was big news. I think it might have made national news. And we've had issues going back to the riots. I mean, it's been a rocky road in Detroit for a long time with the community and police. But I will say in the last decade, we had a police chief that was more of a Second Amendment supporter, which also kind of carried over to the citizenry, at least nominally. When he spoke about it, it was, the Second Amendment as a defensive strategy. But we also saw that Detroit police were still harassing community members and arresting members for carrying, especially during COVID, where it was nearly impossible to apply or renew for your CPL or any of your other licensure. So what the community and the chief were saying versus what was actually happening on the ground is vastly different. But me personally, just because of all of the things that I've witnessed in Detroit growing up with the police interactions and then what we see on the news more and more, I am definitely, I'm a prison abolitionist. I'm a police abolitionist. Would I take reform? Yes. But I think that defense and community policing can be handled in a much different way than the publicly funded government thugs that we call police officers today.
Yeah, you can only reform something so much.
Yeah.
So Detroit's bankruptcy saw heavy government involvement in the recovery process. Do you think the state or federal government should have stepped in, or do you believe the city should have been left to kind of sink or swim on its own and kind of figure it out? What would, and if anything, what would your libertarian solution have been?
Certainly, I didn't want to see Detroit collapse, though I don't think ultimately that would have been what would happen. It would have been painful for the community for a long time, but it was painful, ridiculously painful for the community with the government mandated oversight and the bankruptcy proceedings. So it's going to be painful nonetheless. The fact that the state stepped in and dictated what the priorities of the community were going to be was extremely frustrating. And of course, I never want to see that. I mean, if we have to struggle, then it should once again be up to the community to prioritize what needs to happen and how that needs to happen. And so anytime the state comes in, I think is more of a problem than a solution here.
Yeah, so definitely I always feel that there's a time and place with some stuff, but usually whenever government gets involved, they always just muddy the water more.
Yeah.
They hurt more than they're more hurt than help.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I know we've had issues in Philly and stuff like that with budgeting and everything, and they were closing firehouses and everything like that. And I'm pretty big on with the firehouses and stuff because I'm a volunteer firefighter, semi-retired-ish. I had kids and then never went back.
Right.
So was Detroit and stuff seeing firehouses close and more strain put on the ones that were kept open?
So there wasn't a lot of closures that I'm aware of, but what we did see was no money being allocated for the infrastructure. So the equipment was, of course, not up to par. They couldn't staff completely. And so you would have, smaller crews and crews coming from all over the city to address fire, which again, you've got this gap with travel time. Yeah, so I mean, it definitely was a negative impact, but no, they didn't get so bad that they were closing firehouses, but the force was in a bad state and left in a bad state for a long time.
Okay. So there's definitely a pretty big history of labor union activism in Michigan, especially having had the automotive industry there. Would the Libertarian Party of Michigan support policies to weaken or abolish labor unions, arguing that like they create barriers for economic freedom and such?
So I don't know that the Libertarian Party of Michigan would come down either way on just labor unions per se. I think that we would definitely come down against public sector unions, that is government unions, police unions, for obvious reasons, teachers unions, again, because these are essentially services that they hold hostage, right? And so those particular things, I think that we would publicly and unilaterally, no question asked, come down against. But I don't think that the party itself has much to say about labor unions, except, and of course, when there's some exploitation whereby so with the automotive industry in Michigan, we are fully aware of some of the corruption associated with the labor unions. So we're not oblivious to that. But I don't think there's any real position coming out of Michigan, the party saying that we oppose labor unions, but we do oppose external manipulation of market processes. And if they can, work within that, I don't think anybody would have a problem with it. So I think we're just kind
of... There's a time and place type thing. If they affect the free market, then we're against it. But if they don't do anything to affect it negatively, then sure, whatever. You do you, boo-boo.
Right. Yeah, but definitely public sector unions, definitely.
So they're, again, keeping with kind of with some of this government overreach and stuff. There's quite a few libertarians that believe the government shouldn't be involved in legislation against the LGBTQ plus community rights. Kind of leaving it up to those the businesses and individuals. How do you guys respond to critics who argue that this could lead to like widespread discrimination?
So I think the party's principal concerns are with granting of positive rights versus the negative rights, what we call essential natural rights, right? So I think the time that we would speak up or be most concerned here is when those natural negative rights are being violated, or when special rights are granted in the positive rights domain. So when you give privileged rights to a subset of group, you're essentially, privileging that group over the rest of people. So you're giving them a leg up. That we would definitely be opposed to. Protecting rights, we're not opposed to. So it really is dependent on the particular legislation that's coming down.
All right, and that makes sense. It's kind of on a case by case basis. Yeah. So definitely, there's and it's in every state, national level, everything. There's always internal conflicts within an organization. Now, with internal conflicts within libertarian parties, if I can use my words today, sometimes spill out like into the public outside of our little party borders. And it kind of affects the reputation of the party in general. So we know this has happened with LP Michigan. In general, like what can we do as libertarians and stuff to kind of help fix the party's image, both like from national and state, if there's anything like county, like because I know there's like as you go down the ranks, there's different levels of pettiness and stuff like that get out there that kind of make us not always look like we've got our act together. What do you suggest we as libertarians do?
Right. So one of the things that I've always strived to do and recommend that we do with any of the social media accounts with which I had some control or some input is to stick to platform as much as possible from any party managed asset. We all have personal accounts and we can do whatever we want with those. And we can say whatever libertarian or unlibertarian thing we want. But when we are communicate, or we should be using our social media platforms to communicate to not each other, though we do, but outside to the greater community. We're trying to message to them, and the message should be focused as much as possible on the platform, the issues, of course, of the day that are relevant, and leave all of the drama to our private spaces and our personal accounts to whatever degree we can. Now, do I find it challenging when we have some of our state actors or social media accounts that are intentionally going out there? Well, I think they're intentionally going out there to, for clickbait and to stir the pot and to generate reactions. Do we need to respond to that? Maybe yes, maybe no. Maybe there's a time and a place for that too. But I think we have lots of spaces where we can hash out our differences and the controversies outside of the public eye, and leave the public messaging to relevant libertarian messaging.
Yeah, kind of put on our Sunday best when we're on
yes.
social media and stuff.
Yes.
We don't always need to wear the raggedy sweatpants on social media.
Yes, don't.
So we're not the only third party out there. There's a bunch of other independent groups. Some libertarians are okay and all for working and creating a united front as a third party, with working with groups like the Constitution Party. I know you guys in Michigan have the Taxpayers Party. I think there's the Green Party. Like there's a whole bunch. And a bunch of different, like, to work together to make different coalitions on some what is the word I'm thinking of? Different platforms that are united, like creating like a united front. It's where there's other people in the party that go and say that this is compromising libertarian values and we're sinking to lower levels. What is LP Michigan's kind of stance on working with other third parties to have like a united front on different issues?
In Michigan, we've worked with many of the other parties, whether it be for ballot-related issues, lawsuits in relation to the state, on issues, coalitions, whether it be a third party, another third party, or just other political or issue-based organizations. We do that often. Personally, I think we should, as a party, ally on the issues, relevant issues, especially ones that hinder our ability to be seen, heard, and elected. So fighting those fights with our other third party, with the other third parties, only makes sense. Do I ascribe to allying with them on everything? No, of course not. We don't. Otherwise, they'd be libertarians or we'd be Greens. But on the issues, absolutely. I think we'd be stupid not to.
Yeah, I know. In Pennsylvania, at least me with my stuff, I try to work and network and work with anyone towards a common goal. Like I don't care if you're blue, red, green, purple, orange, whatever. If we have a common goal and we can work together and get along and respect each other, I think it's something we should be able to do. And if it's big, I'm big on education and stuff like that, of just educating people on issues and everything so that they can make an informed decision. Again, big with medical freedom, informed consent is a big thing.
Yeah.
So let's think of something else. So there's definitely a divide in the Libertarian Party between radical libertarians who push for immediate and complete deregulation, and then there's more pragmatic libertarians who advocate for like incremental change. How does the Libertarian Party of Michigan kind of balance between like these two polarizing sides of the party? And how has this caused any internal conflict, and how's that been kind of handled?
So, of course, I did join in 2018. So I guess I'm considered a baby libertarian in the party.
I'm more baby than you are in it. I'm from 2022. So,
I mean, from my perspective, at least from my time in the party, I think for the most part, it's been a relatively peaceful coexistence. I mean, you do have, it's usually something external which kind of generates or pushes one side or the other to the fore during a particular election cycle, we'll say. And there's always friction when you do that shift, right? Whether it's, especially if you're one of the prags and we've got this radical shift, it could be uncomfortable. But I mean, from my time, it wasn't really, it wasn't anything but the normal kind of growing pains, even though it's not growing, it's just that kind of, that readjustment, realignment, until probably around 2020, 2021, where it really kind of fractured. But I think what happened in Michigan, what happened in the LPM is just kind of a symptomatic of what's happening in greater politics. I mean, we're seeing this kind of just really radicalism, and people are being radically pragmatic, or they're being radically radical, and every strain of radicalism is just kind of, if you're just not radical enough is the problem, right? So I think that's kind of caused a much more friction in Michigan, and I think probably in the party in general, since I don't know when. I know that people that have been in the party longer than I have said that this is kind of cyclical. Some of this has happened before, and but yeah, I mean, if that's the case, then I think Michigan will be fine because it's been pretty balanced for the most of my time within the party, and I expect it'll be that way in the future.
Yeah, definitely. I'm seeing it in Pennsylvania and stuff. Your Republicans are either really, really red or not quite red enough. And then you have Dems are super blue and or not quite blue enough. There's no more purple anymore.
Yeah.
And stuff. And the same with the libertarians and stuff like that. You're either way on this side or way on that. There's very minimal middle ground anymore right now. And that's, like I said, it's reflective of the larger picture and stuff like that. And it's just they're mirroring and having to combat the outside forces.
Yeah.
So I've done a little research. Michigan tends to have a history of some pretty active militias. And many citizens and stuff are pretty strong proponents of gun rights. Do you believe private militias should be more empowered under a libertarian government? And kind of how would you address fears of potential violence or instability? Because I know they get kind of a bad rap.
Well, I mean, militias exist today. People join and are active in militias in Michigan and all over the country. And they have been since the founding and before. I mean, before the founding, militias existed. And when we talk about the numbers of guns in our country, we have millions of guns and millions of households with more than one weapon in the home. So expanding militias would in no way negatively impact our safety. It might even improve it. And I think that's what we need to do a better job at doing when we're talking about gun rights in this country is talking about the number of guns versus as a ratio to violence. I mean, most 99.999 probably percent of gun owners are nonviolent, have never committed a crime and will not commit a crime. So I would say that would be the same with militias, and we just need to do better in talking about that statistic. Because again, I mean, most people, guns are inherently violent when used against another person. You can't get around that. And that does, I mean, that makes us all feel a certain way, right? But most of us are not at risk or never will be at risk of gun violence. And so we just need to do better at communicating that.
Yeah, definitely. It goes back to just educating everybody and stuff on values and beliefs of things. Pretty much with the Libertarian Party, we've seen over the last few years the Mises Caucus kind of growing in influence and I'll use the word power throughout the party, both between different states and even up through national. Kind of what role does the Mises Caucus play in Michigan, and has its presence in any way created any tension or with the more mainstream or moderate libertarians within the party? Because I know it can be pretty polarizing sometimes.
So in Michigan, the Mises Caucus was not a problem until they were. That's all I can say. I guess that's how I will sum it up. But I mean, there were concerns. I mean, Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, social media has been terrible for a long time, long before Reno. The tensions and some of the rumblings and concerns were starting to surface prior to Reno in Michigan. But I mean, I was chair of the largest county, for Wayne County, which encompassed Detroit. And my vice chair was a Mises Caucus guy. The secretary was Mises Caucus, and we worked really well together for a couple of years. But I think it wasn't a problem, like I said, until it was a problem. And I think when we got to the point where elections became mandates to mandate what and how we were going to be libertarians and how we could think and how we could act and how we could speak, I think that's when it really kind of fractured and people just kind of reacted against that. I can't speak to the other states and their experiences, only what happened here. And the problem is there wasn't a really fundamental difference in philosophy with the non-caucused members in Michigan and the Mises Caucus. It was more of a strategy conflict than anything, and meaning that this is recoverable. I think a lot of people in Michigan are now open to working with people because we're to the point where it's about it's really about the policies and principles, and all the other stuff is transitory. And so once members get to that point, I think the conflict goes away.
Yeah, and it's definitely just from my experience and my perspective, I've seen a change of how things are achieved or attempted achievements versus like the ultimate goal is the same, but it seems to be one side's more aggressive in how they want to go about it, and it's definitely at least that's what I've seen on my side. And have you been a little bit like that where it's
and I think when you say aggressive, I see this. See, I'm like I said, I'm an anarchist in this libertarian party. I consider myself radical. I said I was a prison abolitionist, a police abolitionist. You know, I want to see the state sundown as soon as possible. But I also recognize that I can't make any of this happen, and I can't make other libertarians see the world the same way I do. That I have to work within this organization and with all of my members, and essentially, if I want that world, and if I want that party, and if I want that messaging, I have to work with people, bring them on board with it, and see the vision, and you know, and we walk that same path together. Mm-hmm. And I think the biggest problem with the aggressive nature was, again, at least in terms of Michigan, a little bit about the Mises Caucus, but not just the Mises Caucus, is that when we started to do that top-down approach within the party, I think that's what really kind of set it off. It wasn't that people were opposed to radical messaging. It was this radical authoritarianism that we were supposed to be fighting out there was kind of coming in and being applied internally. And I think that aggression was our problem.
Yeah, that's, as I said, I'm like, I was trying to think of like, is aggressive the word I want? But it's the one that gets the point across the easiest.
Yeah.
So pivot a little bit. We have Chase Oliver as our Libertarian presidential candidate. His campaign is focusing on a lot of the bodily autonomy, foreign policy, kind of ending the duopoly. How do you think like his messaging and his choice of platform pieces resonates with Michigan voters, particularly with the state's like economic and political landscape currently?
See, I don't think there's room I don't think there's air. Let's start with Chase. Chase is our most libertarian candidate, presidential candidate in a very long time. I mean, he is, when you look up libertarian in a dictionary, you could see Chase Oliver's face right there. I mean, economically, in terms of foreign policy, he's got the message and the platform down. The problem is I think in Michigan and more broadly in the U.S. is there doesn't seem to be a lot of air or space for our candidate. I mean, his message, if you take it, when libertarians, and me specifically, when I'm talking to my Dem friends or my Republican friends or even my independent friends in the state that are considering voting or have already decided who they were going to vote for, you take any of Chase's platform positions and you talk about it in context of some of the issues we've got going on in Michigan, and they're like, yeah, that makes sense. And I could do that easily with 2, 3, 4 of any given day. The problem is we got this political climate. I mean, every election is the most important one. We all know that, right? But I mean, it's gotten to the point where it literally is the lesser of two evils. I think it used to be a joke, maybe, I don't know, but it seems like this is where we are. And people, when I talk to people at events and at festivals, they're like, he sounds wonderful, but I can't let Trump win, or I can't let Harris win. They just don't seem to have space for our candidate this time around, which is unfortunate for them.
I know. For everyone. I know with Pennsylvania, with some of the polls that have been going around, because we're one of the battleground states, is they have it as like 49-49 Trump Harris, but that's if you don't factor in the third parties. You pull in Chase and Jill, and it puts it that Trump's winning 48-47. Like it's people are like, I can't. And again, I get that all the time, but I can't let so and so win, or like I love your guys' platform, or I would love to. I'm like, but why not?
Right, exactly.
Why not? Stand up, fight the system.
The standard libertarian frustration every election cycle.
And I go and I'm like, I'm going to stand by my principles. I'm going to know that I'm going to have that nice sign that says, I didn't vote for him.
Yeah, exactly.
You don't like X, Y, Z. I didn't vote for him, so don't blame me.
Yes. That's my favorite. It's not my fault. But I think in Michigan, we're considered a swing state as well now, which is new since 2016. That's when we really became relevant. And I think it's weird because we've always had pretty much a split government. So if we had a Republican governor, we'd normally have, a very a slim majority or a very split state legislature. And that's been pretty steady throughout my entire life. But because national politics and our electorate tends to be this kind of purple, depends on who's president is who's going to be our governor. It matters now because the margins between the Republicans and Democrats have become so slim. But with Whitmer, and this is what I meant earlier on in the conversation. The Democrats probably would have been done for. Like Whitmer would not have won re-election. They wouldn't have won a majority in the state legislature after COVID if it wasn't for the Supreme Court overturning Roe. And that's the kind of politics that we have going on in Michigan, is we are playing our legislature, our governor is playing really deeply into the national politics. I mean, I rarely hear Whitmer talk about state politics anymore. It's about what's going on in national and what we need to do to elect, Harris. That's what voters have. And I don't know that, honestly, I don't know that Trump is going to have a chance in Michigan this time around because of the particular progressive politics that we're playing here as a contrast to some of these kind of terrible laws that the GOP is pushing, in various states and nationally. And that doesn't work everywhere else, but Michigan, it works really well.
Yeah. So I have two more things to touch on, and then we'll pretty much wrap up for the night. So I plan to ask every guest this question until Ross is freed. Ross Ulbricht's case definitely become a rallying cry for a lot of libertarians, and it's raising questions about government overreach, the war on drugs, and criminal justice reform, which we've touched on. What is the Libertarian Party of Michigan's stance on the Free Ross movement? How can libertarians in Michigan help advocate for his release, while also highlighting broader issues of systemic injustice? And kind of, do you just have any messages for Ross and his mom?
Well, definitely our hearts go out to Ross's mom and Ross. I mean, we've got someone sitting in prison and a life sentence for creating a website for things and actions that other people took, and some of which was, related to drugs, which of course libertarians have been for the legalization of drugs from, well, at least from marijuana, at least from the very beginning. And we advocate for, the elimination of all laws that have no victims, against crimes where there is no victim, which in most cases, drugs, at least the ones that people are convicted on, they're victimless crimes. So we fully advocate for ending the drug war. We absolutely support the commutation, the release, the reduction of sentences for those that have been caught in the drug war. I mean, Michigan has now legalized use of marijuana in our state, yet we still have people imprisoned on, related charges. And we'll continue to advocate for Ross himself.
Yeah, definitely. All of us, we always reach out and always bring at least some mention of it to a conversation. So seems like in a state like Michigan, where economic struggles, government intervention, political polarization all have seemed to shape a lot of like our recent history there. What does true liberty look like to you? And how can the Libertarian Party of Michigan turn that vision into a reality for everyday Michigan citizens?
So if my friend Dana was on the call, she'll tell you what it looks like. So in Michigan, it's a tapestry, and us down in the Southeast and around the capital, we get the full force of government, whereas places like in the Upper Peninsula, where government isn't as present and they're not as visible, you see communities, members helping each other do, regular, building homes, fixing cars, growing food, cooperatives. So in a perfect world, I would really like to see libertarians live their values downstate as well as upstate, and advocate for that that community-based way of living versus, having the state focus on guiding and taking care of us the way that they do today.
Thank you. So that pretty much wraps up our episode today of Liberty Speaks. Again,